Welcome, folks, to another episode of A Pint with Seaniebee. Thank you all again, as always, for your continued support of the podcast. Numbers are getting bigger now, and we've had reviews, and generally it seems to be being well received, which was always the intention. Anyway, please keep sharing, and where possible, it would be great if you could leave a little review, especially on iTunes. Apparently they like that sort of thing. Today's podcast is very interesting because we're going to be talking an awful lot about food that we eat and nutrition. I'm coming to you today from Sarajevo, the home of one of my good friends, Amela O'Reilly, who is one of the leading nutritional lights in the Balkans. She's actually from Sarajevo, Bosnia-Herzegovina is where I am, and she is also the mother of my godchild, Liam. Hello, Liam, if you're listening. I have Mummy on the show. So welcome to the podcast, Amela O'Reilly.
Well, thank you for having me, Sean Boyle, and it's a pleasure, as always, to talk to you, and particularly on the subject that's very close to my heart.
Why don't we start by you explaining what you actually do now?
Okay, well, I do wear a few hats, but they all lead to my main love and passion, which is nutrition. So I work as a nutritional therapist, so I advise people on correct diets depending on their lifestyle, achievements they want to get to, I suppose, where they want to be in the future. So if they're athletes or sports people, where they see themselves in the future, if they're sick people with serious diseases like cancer, osteoporosis, fertility issues, and I work a lot with children. It's a trend now, and it's becoming more than a trend that started with obesity with children. So in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where we're right now, every fourth child is obese, and
Really?
To me that's very frightening, which didn't used to be like that at all. I mean, we used to look at it, Westerners, we look at Americans or Australians and think, dear God, look, the state of themselves, what they did to themselves. Unfortunately, as the trend travels, we adopted those bad Western diet habits, which is fast food, processed food, in our kitchens, on the plates of our children. So that's my biggest fear, and that's where I put a lot of effort and energy to work with. I'm one of Jamie Oliver ambassadors for Bosnia and Herzegovina, so in that respect, I work a lot with children as well.
School food as well is big
exactly.
on your agenda, right?
It's huge, and here in Bosnia, unfortunately, government hasn't done much to make any changes in that respect. But there's a lot of individual efforts. There's a lot of smart people who are willing to make a difference. My favorite schools right now is a Bloom School, and they're an example of a school I would like to see everywhere in the world who are sustainable and locally sourced food. For example, those kids eat mainly organic food, and here in Bosnia-Herzegovina we can afford that. It's not something expensive, so eating seasonal and local is quite achievable, exactly, because with the climate we have, which is very versatile, we can grow everything, and we have a good source of meat and fish, dairy, chicken and eggs, so we're very lucky in that respect.
Why did we let ourselves get into this spiral of obesity and diabetes?
We did it because it's easy. I suppose the right word would be lack of personal responsibility, which I see everywhere. And I lived in different parts of the world, and wherever I've been, it's very much the same. People don't want to take the personal responsibility for their health. We want somebody else to do that for us. We want system, we want government, schools, health education system, medical system, pharmaceutical system, and none of these systems are in favor of our health. They really don't benefit from us being healthy. It's quite the opposite. The sicker we are, the richer these pharmaceutical and agricultural. They're two biggest industries in the world. They can really push the laws in their favor.
But you were even saying to me the other day that you were getting pushback from some parents in the schools.
Well, you have to remember that children have no right to say in most of the aspects of their life except when it comes to food. That's the only tool of manipulation. So in order for them to express their emotion, their attitude, they'll do that through the food. So take a little baby, when he or she spits the food, she does that in kind of exactly, it's rebellious act. They're trying to say something because as the young ones they don't have words to do that. As they progress, they don't have power over decision making. But with the food, they can do that. So they can just say, I'm not eating this. They can throw the food, they can spill the food. They can do all those things in a way to tell us I'm not happy. So often it's not a question of food itself, it's the state of the child. So when you see that when parents are making fuss about it, it's because children refuse to eat, and they don't tend to refuse to eat food at school. It's more so it's food at home.
But then why would that not be a good thing for parents? Like, what are they giving out about?
Well, you see, because again, it's responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a lack of responsibility. They
don't want to be kind of seen to be pilloried for not giving their kids the right food.
Exactly. So
they
what
make
you
excuses of.
Exactly. And often what I say to parents is, don't forget that you're a mirror of everything in terms of manners, so in terms of eating habits. So if I refuse to eat broccoli, I can't expect my son to eat broccoli either, because I'm an example to him in every possible way. So this is what's happening with parents. They don't have time. It's the main thing that parents say to me, I really don't have time to cook. I have no time to eat. I have no time to chew my food or think how much water have I taken during the day. And that reflects on children very much so.
I mean, I presume I was like any kid, being rebellious when I was younger on my food, but I was also have memories of being force-fed vegetables and not allowed to leave the table unless I eat them, and if I get sick, I'm going to have to eat my sick and stuff like that. And so as soon as I got old enough, I went, right, and I now don't really eat cabbage and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts, which just taste like death and all this kind of stuff. So I'm, you advise me sometimes, but I'm quite picky.
A lot of children are like that, and that's a problem. We force feed them. And it comes to any other behavioral issue. If you force anything on children, you'll get the opposite effect. My way of dealing with children is show them, first of all, where the food comes from. They have to have awareness how the food is produced, who produced that food. So get in touch with that farmer and really talk about the food. So in schools, we talk a lot about food production, how important that is, the quality of food production, and then preparations, how the food should be prepared, in which way. And then we go further on, and then we talk about chewing food. So the whole process, so it's not just like, there's a plate of food, eat it. It's really, the awareness of the whole process is very much there. And once they have that, you can be assured they will eat their meat and that meal in front of them, because they have responsibility as well. And they like to be responsible. Children like responsibility.
And on the other side, are you educating them against why junk food is bad for you, and do you do that? Again, responsibility. If they eat that junk food, they're responsible for the effects of that junk food in their bodies. So you can't just say, Mom and Dad, you made me that McDonald's or the Burger King. No, it's your decision as well. Of course, as a young child, you had no choice in it. But as I said to you, food is the only element where they can manipulate us as adult parents. So, and they use it very wisely. Trust me, kids are very smart people. I, as you know, I'd be skeptical of this a lot of my life, and also a really poor advert for eating and living healthily. I've been drinking a lot. I still smoke cigarettes, and I used to eat a lot of fast food, and then serial killers, my friend Donald O'Neill, who I hope to have on the show at some point, made a documentary a couple of years ago about the food we eat, and this battle from the 60s that basically governed the food types and the food pyramid in America, which was a battle between sugar and fat. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. It is now hitting us back, because yourself and myself are a generation of those children who are raised on grains, on cereals. You think of the breakfast, and it was cereal of some form, and it was advertised, as you well know, coming from that part, how important it is to eat our cereals in the morning, and with the milk. And apropos that, I think we are moving back to the direction of eating healthier. Well, awareness is there, so we're realizing now that grains were the worst thing that were introduced into our diet.
So why are grains bad for us?
For so many reasons. Number one, they're part of our diet for the last 200 years. So we're still adapting to grains. Grains equal sugar. So when you digest grains, any type of grains, whole grain, partially grained, brown bread, white bread. We were talking about this morning. We had a basket of bread in front of us. One was very much brown, dark bread, and one was white. And you were asking me, what's the difference? The difference is in how fast that grain is digested. So if it's a whole grain, the sugar in that grain will be digested slower. so we wouldn't get that sugar rush in our body, so insulin levels won't rise so high. But end product is sugar. So if you don't use that sugar, so if you're not an athlete, you're not a sports person, you're not using that sugar in physical form, that's going to be retained in your body in some form, and you're going to gain weight. One of the reasons is we don't want to eat so many grains. We don't use them. So our ancestors used grains because they were more physically active. We are a sedentary generations. We sit, which is another big problem in the modern lifestyle. We don't move enough, and when we move, we sit for 7-8 hours a day, and then we go to gym for an hour and think we're great, which is quite opposite. So many research has come lately and saying we might as well not exercise. That hour doesn't make any difference in our metabolic rate. It's more important to move through the day as frequent as possible. And all these new companies from Facebook, Google, Yahoo are creating these smart tables for their staff, exactly, where the table moves up every 5 minutes to make you get up and work. Or you can work standing up. So,
just to be clear though, the USDA food pyramid says we should be eating mostly grains.
Yes,
that is the bottom. That is the big platform at the bottom.
Well, back to that power. Agriculture industry is so powerful. They'll make you eat what makes most money for them. So one side is the sugar, the other side that we didn't adapt to eating grains. So you have a lot of people in different parts of the world who genetically haven't adapted to eating grains, and we have this problem with, as you know, celiac disease and intolerance to wheat and gluten intolerance, which became very in thing. For some people, it's a very serious disease. I mean, celiac disease is very serious, and it should be taken very seriously. I know that it's very trendy to say, I'm gluten intolerant. Yeah. And so people go into the restaurants and go, I can't eat this or that, and is there gluten?
Yeah, because everyone about 5 years ago was lactose intolerant. Now no one ever hears about lactose intolerant. They're all gluten intolerant.
Yes, it became, it's just again awareness. People.
It's also marketing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, creating a fad.
Absolutely, and again, industry is using that very wisely. And for people who, gluten intolerant, it's not about eating gluten-free food. It's about using proper food. And it's really going back to the roots, how we used to eat hundreds and hundreds of years ago, which is really quality protein and plenty of vegetables with adding good essential fatty acids. And we moved so far from that.
Well, it was interesting with serial killers. So it is cereal with a C rather than an S. Let's see what he did there, serial killers. And I was actually consulting, and we do a little bit about the way my background and yours butt up against each other because of the role advertising has played in all this, which we'll get to later. But in serial killers, the basic point was, back in the 50s and 60s, there were these two scientists, and one guy said, the reason that America is becoming unhealthy and fat is because we're eating too much sugar, and somebody else said, no, it's because we're eating too much fat.
Correct.
And the guy who said we're eating too much fat kind of won, and the other guy was belittled and, almost lost his kind of credential in medicine. And, meanwhile, the USDA goes, as you said, corn is a huge agriculture crop in America. Corn syrup and sugar and wheat and all that kind of stuff. So that became what it was. And only in the last 10 or 15 years has this old guy who said we were eating too much sugars theory come back on the table and is now being proven to have been correct. That the reason we're not just about obesity but about brain disease and all that
inflammatory
is caused
disease,
by sugar, inflammatory diseases.
Yes.
To the point where they're starting to say sugar is as bad for you as nearly nicotine and cigarettes and everything, and we're going to be in a future with sugar as health warnings, and we're starting to get taxation on sugary soft drinks.
Finally, it's coming.
It's scary the way that was allowed to happen. From my point of view, after doing the documentary, just for listeners, I was probably about 97 kilos, and Donald O'Neill, the maker of the movie, put me on a high-fat diet. Of course, the problem with being on a high-fat diet is fat. The term fat.
I think it's a wrong name in the first place.
Yeah, I think so anyone in the ad business listening, you can rebrand the term fat.
Completely.
They put me on a high-fat diet, which was easy. I just changed what I ate. So I ate, lots of almonds and macadamia nuts and peanuts, and I had bacon and cheese, and it was easy. When I say high fat, that doesn't mean you can go and order 6 Big Macs at McDonald's. It's natural fats,
good
natural
quality
fatty
fats.
food.
Exactly.
Cutting out soft drinks, cutting out beer, which that was hard for me. My beer consumption is down by 90%. But a very interesting thing happened. I lost And I was working out every day, but I had been working out for a year before that, and I hadn't lost any weight.
Yes.
And suddenly I started losing 1 kilo every month for 10 straight months. And I was bowled over by this. And I wasn't portion controlling.
Yes.
And occasionally I'd go out and have pasta, and I wasn't going all paleo and quacky on it. But I was fascinated. I went from 97 down to 86 kilos, and I'm like feeling better for it. And it was easy.
Well, I think what's important for you to say as well, how your health index, you did the test, didn't you?
Oh, yeah. So I did all my blood work. And my blood work, things like my booze number, which was ATLs, which are liver function. I used to drink a lot of beer. I changed to vodka and soda, and that was below 50 for the first time. It's supposed to be under 50, and I got 49. I was regularly getting 145.
Yes.
And everyone said I was going to get cholesterol problems, but I didn't. And triglycerides are another key thing. So I'm not really fully up to speed in it, but the key markers of inflammation and key markers, and my cholesterol was fine. So even though I ate 25 eggs a week, including yellow and white bits of the egg, so the doctors who were monitoring me were just like bowled over. They didn't believe it. They thought it was stupid, and a lot of doctors still do believe it's stupid. The idea being that we limit carbohydrate in our system, right?
Yes. Well, you made a very good 2 points there. We often say in nutrition that there is no amount of exercise will make you healthier unless you change your diet. So unless you change your diet, you can exercise every day for many hours a day and you still eat very bad food, you won't become healthier. So that's really important for people to realize that you have to, it's a lifestyle. It's not just, you can't just pick and choose certain parts of your lifestyle and go, I'll go with exercise and I'll eat really bad. So it doesn't really matter. It does matter. So it's so many aspects of that will affect our health. So it's a, diet, eating healthier, exercising regularly, sleeping well, hydrating your body, so breathing fresh, healthy air, stress control. They're all aspects of being healthy. Our healthy is a complex subject, but it is very rewarding. And as you pointed out, once you start doing it, it does give you results. And that the way you did it, which is the healthy way, and I'm not a fan of any quick diets where you lose your 10 kilos in a month and voila. Body's very smart. It will do that for you, but mainly it will lose the water, but then the metabolic rate starts slowing down and people will say to you, I drank a glass of water and I gained weight. That's because you haven't really done much in terms of changing your lifestyle. So it's really important to do this in a package, and then you can see the changes and the healthy way of losing weight, which happened to you. And once you lose that weight, it never comes back, which is really amazing,
that's what has surprised me
most.
I could go and spend a month in Dublin binge drinking and eating every night, and I'd be worried, I'm going to pile on a kilo. I might put a couple of kilos on, but they fall off quickly.
Once you go back to that healthy lifestyle, and that's really important. And that's how
Explain why this is happening to me. Explain what is happening to my body about this cutting out the sugar and carbs and instead focusing on burning fat. Explain how that works to people.
Of course. First of all, at the very start, when you started explaining what you did, you increased the fat intake. And as we said both, the fat has really bad reputation. We should rebrand it into, something health. You'll think of that. I'm sure that's your job. Slim, yes.
I'm on a slim diet. Yes,
very good. Fat is an essential part of us, and if we don't consume fat, we become very sick. Our brain is fat, and we cannot function. And if we do stop eating fat, we'll become not only unhealthier, we become stupider. So we can't, really.
If we don't eat fat.
Exactly. Our
but
cognitive function.
Why we become stupider if we don't eat fat.
In your case, because, and you very well explained what happens in the 60s, you really had these two schools of thoughts. What's healthier first? Is it fat or is it grains? But nobody talked about sugar content of the grains. It was just grain in general, whole grain, all these minerals we get from them. They're really important because of the fiber intake. They prevent colon cancer, cardiovascular diseases. So they really, had all these facts. And on the side, the fat is such a bad word. It clogs the arteries. It creates so many health problems. So, it's a bad thing, and we take fat out of everything. So what we did in years to come and in decades to come, we increased the grain intake. So grain was part of everything from breakfast, lunch and dinner. And it was part of adding to the foods, because grain is very cheap addition to anything. So any processed food, any food that you find in the shelves of the supermarket has some form of a sugar. So you mentioned corn, soya is on the same level. So it's cheap production, it's massively produced, it's genetically modified, which is another subject completely.
Jury's still out there.
Well,
not in your mind.
Not in my mind at all. I think that's subject for another sit down with you, exactly. So what happened is we were adding this sugar constantly without even realize. You have this corn sugar, which is now everywhere. And
explain why people should never buy anything in the supermarket that's low fat.
Well, as exactly, I was going there. So we were consuming more grains, less fat, and fat is like this bad word, bad guy. So more fat, the worse for us. So we're taking fat out. So if you take fat out of the, let's say, butter or milk or cheese, it becomes very unpalatable. So you have to add something to create a taste of the product. So what we did, what industry did, added sugar into it to make it more palatable. So when you bite into that cheese or you drank that milk, you go, it tastes good, I'm going to consume it, and I'm going to consume more and more. Sugar, on the other hand, is addictive. So it craves you eat more. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine.
Right.
So it really is a drug, equals to drug. And more you consume it, the worse you get. So you go back, you think of that really nice thought of, and you bite into that chips or that crisp or that chocolate or biscuit, that effect it had on your brain made you that lovely addictive. Absolutely, it creates the addictive behavior, and you crave more. And that's what we're creating now. I'm seeing now it's first-hand generation of kids who are hooked on sugar, addicts. And it's really hard because it's everywhere. It's in everything you touch, there's sugar as a very cheap preservative. Less fat. If we did the opposite thing, if we created more fat, healthy fat, which generation of our ancestors lived on, and that's why they were healthier comparing to us. We're the first generation of parents, I'm talking about myself, where our children are sicker than us. And that never ever happened in the evolution of a human race. It's very scary.
Well, he made the point to me that when the 50s, particularly say in Ireland or in America, or England, there was a cooked breakfast, right? So you had working men
exactly.
were going out to, and usually was men, were going out to work in a factory or in the fields or whatever, and they would need sustenance. So breakfast, when everyone goes on about breakfast being the most important meal, I don't really believe that, but anyway, because I've gone without breakfast for much of my life. But for those guys, and they used to have, kippers or bacon or eggs, and it was with tea and maybe a bit of toast, right? So the only real sugar was the toast. Okay, which was covered in full fat butter. The stuff was fried in oil, probably not great oil, but it was fried. Then orange juice started creeping in. Then marmalades. Then no cooked meal because people were in a hurry. So then we were having tea with sugar in it usually, or coffee with sugar, orange juice which is full of sugar, toast which was full of sugar, with marmalade full of sugar and jam full of sugar, and cereals then came along which were full of sugar with me. So the point is that before we even begin a day, we've now got more sugar than we even should have inside our bodies. We're not to mind what happens at lunchtime and dinner, right?
Correct.
And so the idea being that, it might be useful for people just for me quickly to go through what I started to eat. So I started to eat eggs in the morning again, and bacon. I didn't eat any toast. Tea, I ate peanuts as much as I wanted, almonds, pistachios, hazelnut, coconut water instead of soft drinks, ordinary water instead of soft drinks, full fat milk but not drink it, put it in your coffee and tea, full fat butter, and then steaks. And if I'm having a burger, don't have a bun with it, have as much cheese as you want, avocado, obviously salads and rabbit food and tomatoes and all that kind of stuff that we all know is good for us. But within that kind of diet, I can perfectly operate, and it's actually tasty and I enjoy it, and it's not that difficult to keep to.
No, not
the harder things were I had to cut out potatoes. I'm Irish. I had to cut out my beer drinking, so I went from 100 to 9 to 10 on my beers, dropped 90% of that. I still drink as much wine as I want. I still drink as much vodka and soda as I want. I cut out my Jack Daniels and Coke. But that's just a quick framework that I did, which was not scientific in terms of its portioning, and it worked for me. And I think it's working for other friends of mine who I've put on it.
So basically what you described is this Paleolithic or kind of a Stone Age diet, which again that's the diet our ancestors ate before the Industrial Revolution, before the grains came in, before we started really eating grains.
But I know people who are on paleo, and that just freaks me out because it's so quacky.
Yes.
And it's actually very expensive because they're buying fresh food, fish, and it's expensive. I mean, I'm eating peanut butter, and I'm like still the same slobby guy, and I'm eating the same slobby crap, but it's like better for me slobby crap, and I'm losing weight as a result, not putting it on.
Of course.
I think that's, when you go back to your point about the children, there's always going to be a tiny percentage of people who will go to nutritionists and who will treat their body as a temple. But what we're talking about here is the great unwashed, who think it's too hard, who are afraid, who couldn't be arsed. Those sorts of people is where we get the real change, right?
Correct. And as you said, they can't be, they don't want to make an effort. That's again back to personal responsibility and how much effort you want to put in aim to gain better health. You've changed type of food it is. It's not about the quantity, it's the quality of food we ate. So you eat, and what you did is you turn into more quality protein, which you now consume. You eat more vegetables than you ever consume. You don't take grains in any form, or you take it very little and occasionally. And when you do, you enjoy it. Food should be enjoyable process, and I don't like when people beat themselves over it, because that's contradictory. You should enjoy a glass of wine. You should really take a pleasure in food. Food is very pleasurable, and I'm really sorry that we're turning into these, as you said, people becoming obsessive about it. That's really wrong, because it's the other side of the medal, and that's not good. Again, we're giving wrong examples to our kids. Yeah. Behind all these industries, Kraft's, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, the big names are like these very, very high-tech laboratories who are, they test all these foods in order for us to make us more addictive, adding more sugar or forms of sugar. So it's not anymore like if you turn the pack of crisps and you look at the ingredients and see, the first would be sugar. It would be maltodextrin, it would be sucrose, saccharose, all these forms of sugar that we even don't understand what it means. Yeah. When my clients ask me, so how will I know what really is inside? It's like, well, if you don't understand it, don't buy it. If it doesn't, read foods that you understand, that means it's really some chemical form of sugar or some additive that you don't want to be part of your body.
So I've worked for Nestle, I've worked for Procter & Gamble, I've worked for Kraft, I've worked for Coca-Cola Company, I've worked for snack foods companies, I've worked for cereal makers, and I can tell you that there's no evil machinations that I've seen. There's just everyday folks like you and me who at the back of their mind now can't ignore the fact that what they're making is bad for us. There's brands that become the epicenter poster children. Coca-Cola becomes the poster child for badness and sugar, and is at least addressing it, and is not afraid to talk about it, and is talking about reducing portion size, and is getting... McDonald's are the epicenter of fast food, and they have tried to bring apples and stuff onto the menu as a kind of... But this is like cigarette companies trying to get away with it for as long as possible. Why can't a company like Kraft Indira Nooy in Pepsi is somebody who's very charismatic and quite inspirational, and is again not afraid as the CEO to speak up and say, yes, we have a lot of products in Frito-Lay and Pepsi and all this stuff that's really, really, really bad for people, and we're working on it. What can they do? Because as soon as Pepsi stops selling Pepsi, Coke gets 90% of the market.
Yeah, it's a competitive market, absolutely, and you're well aware of that. They'll do very little because they won't gain money. It's about money and power in the business, and if they become healthier, they certainly lose to these big names. So all of these that you named, they all do little sections of like, let's do the good stuff. They'll sponsor marathons, they do this and that. But in the big picture, they're poisoning us. And really, it's up to us, back to the personal responsibility, is to be aware when we do drink that Coca-Cola or Pepsi, when we take that burger, what are we doing to our body? Because they won't change, full stop. So they haven't changed in the past, they won't change in the future.
But the companies, if they collectively agreed to say, we've got to fix this, it seems to be the only way that we're going to really get some change.
Of course, and I mean, there's so much being done, and I mean, even Michelle Obama addressed the CEOs of these companies recently, and they have this promise that they're going to reduce the amount of sugar in their food. So there's progress. It's not like we're standing in the same place like we were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. However, I think we're back to that in terms of quality, because they're mass producers, so they can't produce amount of food or amount of produce that will satisfy the mass market with the quality ingredients. It will be more expensive, of course, and won't be affordable. So in that respect, they cannot put the expensive ingredients in that type of food. So it's up to us.
Then you, which has been rumoured and rumbled about, you tax the shit out of sugar.
Absolutely, which is happening now, as you said. You have Jamie Oliver, who has succeeded in doing that, and now the England Parliament has voted for sugar taxation, which is fantastic. Yeah. So at least when you buy that Coca-Cola, when you buy those chewing gums, or you buy the packet of those crisps, you are aware that you tax for right reasons. So it's your responsibility. It's not responsibility of CEO of Coca-Cola. You're taking that responsibility by buying that produce and consuming it. So you can't point fingers at Coca-Cola and say, you know what, you caused my obesity. No, it's you. You personally chose that. So a personal choice is what we're making every day. And it's not about having Coca-Cola today or having burger today. It's a cumulative effect. So you're having this every day in some form. You have Coca-Cola, you have crisps, the fast food. So you don't take responsibility over your health. So it's not fair, even though I'm not in favor of any of these companies, to point fingers. Of course, they can do so much, and they can work on educating and awareness, raising awareness. But it's really come back to us, and how much are we willing to pay attention to our health.
Stanhope said raising awareness is another form of doing nothing.
Yes.
But what's interesting with the Michelle Obama situation with the school dinners is apparently it's not working. I mean, kids are just refusing to eat it.
Yeah, because
their parents are giving them money to buy chips and Coca-Cola from the snack machines that are in, or bring them into school with you.
That's what I kept saying to you. It's lack of responsibility on parents' side, and educational system can do so much. But if I, as a parent, not willing to put effort into educating my child and giving the right example, I can't expect that to happen. That the school won't change, the system won't change that child. So it's really back to the family, the roots.
So just to finish, one of the things I think I'd like to ask you is I would imagine a lot of the people who listen to my podcast think they're overweight, are probably cynical, don't want to get into the whole paleo thing, want to enjoy drinking and some of their vices. What 3 or 4 or 5 easy things would you recommend to someone like me or a girl who's still wants to do it, still wants to enjoy guilty pleasures, but wants to also lose some weight?
A few very simple advices. Cut the grains. No bread, no pasta, no risottos, no potatoes. Okay. Basically, that's a sugar out completely. Right. So do have occasional treat. I mean, have your chocolate souffle, but when you do have a chocolate souffle, have a dark chocolate souffle, because dark chocolate has antioxidant and has minerals. So
if I want to have cheese and crackers, can I have crackers?
No. Again, you have your cheese and you have your olives, because they're a source of essential fatty acids, and you have vegetables. So you can have carrot sticks, you can have cucumbers, you can have salad of any form. I'm getting boring here.
People will be glazing over. Okay, so we're going to assume bread and pasta. Let's take that out.
Okay, let's take that.
And then from boozing point of view,
beer out, dark colored alcohol, because it's higher in sugar, so there's higher glycemic index there. So
and if you're having spirits, don't mix with
tonic water. So go for sparkling water. No, absolutely not. So sparkling water, still water is okay. Adding lemon or lime is absolutely okay.
So far we've got no bread, no pasta, no potatoes, cut down on beer consumption. Can we drink wine?
Yes, we can. Red better than white. Because of the health properties.
Okay, and no Coca-Cola, so not even in mixers, no Red Bull.
No, none of that.
Okay, so you're going to mix your spirits, mix it with fizzy water?
Yes.
We can put lime and lemon in that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, no chips?
No, so if you're having your drinks, have that with some olives, some nuts, salted nuts.
All nuts are okay?
All nuts are okay, absolutely.
Okay, and what about sort of for meals?
Okay, so if you're talking about balance,
make it simple for the fatties.
Okay, I wouldn't like to call them that way.
I can.
Okay.
It's they're my listeners.
You're entitled to. I would go good quality protein.
Right.
So
Can you explain what you mean now?
I'm thinking of a good steak, good
burgers,
a good burger,
but no bun.
no bun. So
Can we have
again,
cheese and bacon on it?
yes, you can.
Okay, it's good.
Healthy fats. Olive oil would be the number one. Coconut oil to cook on because it's the hard
you're straying into glazing over it. It's
okay.
Too much. So
I'm just trying to make them
tuna.
Okay, tuna.
Cans of tuna.
Ideally not. Fresh fish is the better.
But okay if it's canned.
Of course,
we go to
yeah.
supermarkets. Chicken is okay.
Okay, you got me there. Chicken is okay. So our eggs, ideally go for the free range one or organic if you can afford. Cheese is okay.
Cheese, okay.
The harder cheese, the better because it's fermented and easier to digest.
Okay.
And cheese is okay to have in breakfast, lunch, or dinner, or snacks with those alcoholic drinks you mentioned earlier. So eggs, your breakfast, eggs and bacon, eggs and cheese. Again, I would like more of a salad editor. So if you can add salad, better for you because you have all the vitamins and minerals.
And do a bit of exercise when you can.
You should be moving.
So we have right there a non-diet, a change of what we eat. And finally, for parents of younger kids, 3 things to help them get over this hump of the kid using the food. How can we do that better?
Well, we said at the beginning, go with your personal example. So very important.
Kids eat what you eat.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it's very.
And the second thing you said was to try and show them where it came from, right?
Yes, educate them. Yes. So I always say to the parents, go shopping with children. Let them know, particularly if you can go to those markets, so the children meet the food producers. So it's very important. And then work with schools. Get the schools to create better food choices for children because that's possible nowadays. Really, in any school, healthy food doesn't equal expensive food. We can all eat healthy in our budget. So just adapt to the budget you have and choose the healthier possible food you can afford for yourself and your family.
Seaniebee is one of the skeptics in this whole area. I wanted to do a show about the food that we eat. That was a great one from Amela O'Reilly, the top nutritionist in the Balkans based in Sarajevo. I presume people can send an email to you at some point if they wanted to.
Oh, absolutely.
I'll have an email for Amela in the blurb if you want to clarify anything that she said. My view is, from a personal experience, that it is doable, and I'm a testament to that, and it doesn't need to be that hard. We've covered the ground today on the stuff you can eat without going into I'm constantly on a diet. I'm particularly talking about men here because women spend an awful lot of their time in diet mode, but men tend to just forget it. I'm particularly talking about men in their 40s. So guys, any of you listening, I can thoroughly recommend the foods that were talked about today. Try them for a couple of months and I bet you'll see the weight fall off. Amela O'Reilly, thank you very much for being on A Pint with Seaniebee. By the way, we didn't have a pint of beer today, we had a pint of water.
Good, very good point. Thank you, and it was a pleasure.
Bye.